you get glitter stitches, and I get glitter stitches, and our projects get glitter stitches, a little extra. Okay, today we're having book club. Mindful Thoughts for Makers, Connecting Head, Heart, and Hands by Ellie Beck. Today's chapter is beefy. There's so much wisdom in this short chapter. It's called Making and the Ego. So Ellie has the image of a person on a mirror, which is a reflection, right? And that's how we literally see ourselves in the mirror. So this is a little uncomfortable for me, right? And we're just going to see what happens together. But there's a lot of interesting ideas in this chapter. So Ellie talks about being a maker and how the ego and the maker are enmeshed, right? And there's ideas of the person making, the perception of making, the perfection of the result, the quality of the person, and the quality of the product, right? So ego doesn't have to be a bad word. It's part of the human condition, and it's part of healthy people. But there's nuance, right? Sometimes overconfident people can come across as having too much ego. But the unhealthy ego is the low self-esteem. And so I think of ego as a gradient, right? There's a lot of space between being overconfident, underconfident, and then the healthy confidence, the healthy self-esteem. And then, of course, with our making and sharing our making, and then the social media, how that's the medium that we share things together, right? So there's that whole piece of it. And sometimes there's oversharing on social media and digital. And sometimes we make things just for ourselves that don't have to be shared. And again, that's a gradient. We have everything on social media, nothing on social media. And then there's a point in the middle where we can connect over social media in a more authentic way. Yeah. Okay. So I want to read a sentence because the author says it the best. So in the paragraph, the author, Ellie, talks about sort of the overshare, the ego-driven sharing, the talking up what we make. And then on this other side, she says, but conversely, never sharing our work or not accepting compliments for it can be a mirror into the fears that we hold or our low self-esteem. And that's the nugget of truth for me. For me, this has been the entry point into some of my deep personal growth work. Accepting compliments for the things that I make has been a journey. It continues to be a journey, and it's something that I have to practice. So when I think about the lofty ideas of Brené Brown and being vulnerable and having an imperfection practice and all of these concepts that are very lofty and not accessible for me, the way that I bring these ideas into my everyday life are through my knitting and through my making. And one of the first things that I noticed is how, for me, many years ago, when I would share my work, I had to add a condition, a modifier, a self-depreciating comment, right? Oh, I made this scarf, and the other person would say, it's beautiful, and I would say, yeah, but there's a lot of mistakes in it. That's a red flag into my fear and low self-esteem, right? At that moment, that exchange. So it's something that I had to learn about, become aware of, sort of marinate and think about how I was deflecting a compliment and I wasn't able to receive someone's genuine and sincere compliment. So it took a lot of work. I had to work at this and I had to practice it, and it's still something that I kind of feel uncomfortable about today, but I'm sharing it. I've done a lot of work on this. And this one sentence was like chef's kiss. It was a nugget that I could really sink my teeth into because I've practiced it. Just like when you're practicing the piano, sometimes you make mistakes. And so I had to learn ways to accept compliments graciously. So I went to Google. That's one way that I got more information, and that for me, the simplest, easiest thing to do was to start by saying thank you. Thank you as a full sentence with a period and no additional explanation. Thank you. So in our example scenario, if I was showing someone something that I made and they complimented what I made, it was like that first initial like seizing of like, oh no, what do I say? I already had a script prepared, and my script was thank you. And it took practice for me to say that as a full sentence. But I got good at it. And that became the reaction or the automatic response. And so that was growth for me. That was like, okay, now I can accept a compliment and I can say thank you. And I really do feel gratitude in my heart for that person showing their vulnerability, their appreciation, and sometimes even giving a compliment can feel uncomfortable. But I took that on as a sincere expression. And you can tell when people are being sincere and when they're not being sincere. You know that. So this is part of the practice, is acknowledging that that's not a sincere compliment, or if it is, and then responding graciously regardless. Thank you became my go-to response. But it took awareness that it was happening. It took practice. I had to do research to figure out what my better script is and was, and then I had to use it. I had to put that tool into place. So that's my personal experience with how to accept compliments and how I've experienced receiving compliments, and I feel like I'm getting a little bit better every time that I say thank you when a compliment's offered. So that's one sentence out of this chapter, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this chapter, making and the ego, and next week we'll see what else Ellie talks about. Okay, have a great day, you guys. Keep knitting.